So the next thing we're going to do is to go down to this setup tools function, and on top of the local tools that it's already using, we're going to add those MCP tools. So we create this client, which is an instance of the multi-server MCP client method. And you can see within that you have the option of adding multiple MCP servers, but we're just going to add the clunky one. And you can see from the arguments that we're adding, what we're doing is registering and connecting to that external node-based MCP server, the clunky server, via standard I/O. And then we need to bind these tools, the tools available via clunky, to the model. So we do this using this get tools method on the client that we just created. And then we're going to add these bound tools to what's returned from this setup tools function. And what this get tools method does is returns to the LLM a list of tool specifications for the MCP tools, things like the names, the description, the JSON schemas for arguments. And this is the stuff that we've been explicitly giving to the model when we created our custom tools. And then there's actually not that much left to do. Really, the last thing that we need to do in terms of changing the code for our agent is to update the example workflows that we provided in the system prompt. Now, because our workflows are considerably more complex now, we've now added several more tools and they need to be called in a certain order. It's best to be very explicit in these examples. So I've just pasted 2 examples that I prepared earlier here. So in this first example, we are prompting the agent to get 20 easy words in Spanish, translate them to English, and create a new Anki deck with them called Spanish Easy. So you can see, in addition to all of the usual fields that we've been covering, we also have this new tools workflow that we're giving to the model. And basically what we're telling the model is we need you to execute these things in a specific order. Get n random words by difficulty level first, then translate the words, then use the MCP tool create deck, then use the MCP tool create card. So a similar thing with this second example, get 10 random words in German and create a new Anki deck with them called German words. So in our workflow, we specify that we first need the model to call get n random words, then MCP tools create deck, and then MCP tools create card. So you can see that we're attempting to add this additional structure to teach the model what it's supposed to do. And then the last thing we need to do before we can run our agent is to open the Anki desktop app. So I'm just going to open up Spotlight Search, type in Anki, and then open up the app. So we just need to have that running in the background while we run our agent. Okay, so let's now go down and update our user prompt. So we are going to change the source language to German. We're going to change the target language to English. So now we have please get 10 basic words in German, translate them to English. And now we're going to add this additional instruction and add them to an Anki deck called German Easy. And then we're just going to go ahead and run the agent. And because we're asking the agent to do significantly more than we were previously, this is going to take quite a bit longer. So I'm just going to fast forward through and get us to the point where we start seeing output. And then of course, because this workflow is a lot more complex, there's a lot more output here. So let's just scroll up to the top to see what it did. So first it's determined the source language, which is German. The number of words is 10. The difficulty level maps to beginner. And it has decided that the first step is to correctly call that get n random words by difficulty level tool. And then it determines that the next step correctly is to translate the words to English using the translate words function. And then it doesn't actually say anything about using the clunky tools. But if we go down to the tool calls, we can see that indeed the first tool call is to get n random words by difficulty level. And then the next is to translate words. And then if we keep going down, we can see that it's created the deck, which is the correct next step. And then it's just creating individual cards in different tool calls for each of these tools. And then, of course, the final step is to go over to Anki and check that it did what it said it did. So if we open up the Anki app, we can see that indeed there is a deck called German there. And when we expand on it, we can see that specific easy deck that we asked for. And indeed, as we requested, this contains 10 words. And then if we open up this deck and we have a look at the words by clicking Study Now, we can see these are the exact words and translations we saw during the running of the agent in the debugger. So we have Auto and its translation car, we have Sonne and we have its translation sun, and so on and so forth.